Before touchscreens took over the dashboard, there were trucks that ran on nothing but iron, air, and attitude. No check engine light, because there was no computer to check, no lane departure warning, the driver was the technology. These rigs crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and hauled the nation's freight with a mechanical fuel pump and a stubborn refusal to quit. Some were legends. One was so rare that only 261 were ever built. Here are 10 more old-school trucks that never needed fancy technology. Number 10. White Road Commander. Let's kick this off with a cabover that a lot of drivers loved to hate and secretly respected. The White Road Commander was White Motor Corporation's heavy-duty cabover engine truck, built from 1972 to 1983. Back then, cabovers ruled the highway because of strict length laws. A flat-nosed truck let you run a longer, more profitable trailer. In 1975, White modernized it into the Road Commander II, with a split wraparound windshield and the tapered doors that White shared right across its lineup, including its sister brands Autocar and Western Star. That parts sharing was smart, old-school engineering. Fewer unique pieces meant easier repairs and cheaper stock on the shelf. Under that flat cab, the Road Commander was pure mechanical muscle. A Cummins NTC 350 backed by a 15-speed Road Ranger transmission was a classic combination. No electronic engine management, no sensors deciding how much fuel to give you. Just a governor, an injection pump, and a driver who knew how to read a tachometer and work the gears. Now, I'll be honest with you, because these trucks earned their reputation the hard way. Cabovers like the Road Commander rode rough, ran hot, and were loud enough to leave your ears ringing. Some drivers jokingly called it the Road Commode. But here's the thing, it worked. It was tough, it was simple, and it moved freight for a living without a single computer chip on board. When White teamed up with GMC in 1988, the design lived on as a White GMC, and the same basic cab even soldiered on wearing a Western Star badge in Canada and out west. It's worth remembering that White created Western Star in the first place back in 1967, specifically to take on Peterbilt and Kenworth on the West Coast. The Road Commander may not be the prettiest truck on this list, but it's a genuine piece of trucking's cabover golden age, analog, honest, and built to haul. Number 9. GMC Astro 95. If you watched our first video, you'll remember the GMC Cracker Box. Well, in 1969, GMC retired that boxy little legend and replaced it with something sleeker and far more comfortable, the GMC Astro 95. The Astro was General Motors' Class 8 cabover, and it carried on the same winning philosophy: keep it light, keep it simple. The cab was built from aluminum and tilted fully forward, so a mechanic could swing the whole thing up and stand right next to the engine. GM built these at its plant in Pontiac, Michigan, and sold a near-identical twin under the Chevrolet name, the Titan. What made the Astro an old-school hero was what lived under that cab, a lineup of the toughest mechanical diesels ever made. You could spec a Detroit diesel from the legendary 71 series, the 671, the 8V71, even the mighty 12V71, with that unmistakable two-stroke scream that any old trucker can still hear in his sleep. Later you could get the Detroit 92 series, a Caterpillar 3406, or a big Cummins. Every one of them was a purely mechanical engine, no black box, no software, just fuel, air, and compression. The Astro became a real presence on American highways through the 1970s and into the 80s. There was even a flashy Astro SS version with bold graphics that made it a favorite of owner-operators who wanted their rig to stand out at the truck stop. It had power steering and air ride available, but at its heart it stayed a straightforward working machine, the kind of truck you could diagnose with your ears and fix with a wrench. GM kept building the Astro all the way to 1987, when the company finally stepped back from the Class 8 heavy truck business. It marked the end of an era for GMC on the big highways. But for nearly 2 decades, the Astro 95 proved that a lightweight, aluminum, honest cabover could go toe-to-toe with anybody. No fancy technology required. Number 8. International Transtar. Now let's talk about a truck from one of the oldest names in American industry. International Harvester's roots go all the way back to the 1840s and Cyrus McCormick's horse-drawn reaper, the machine that helped mechanize American farming. By the middle of the 20th century, International was sitting right at the top of the American heavy truck pyramid, and its highway king was the Transtar. The Transtar name showed up in 1968, first on International's cabover, a big, tall, flat-faced tractor with one of the most recognizable front ends in trucking history. That distinctive tall trapezoidal grille with the sharp accent lines became such an icon that International kept using that shape on its cabovers well into the 1990s. In 1969 came a conventional long hood Transstar 2, and by 1971 you had the short hood 4270 and the long hood 4370 to choose from. These were built to work, and built simply. The standard power was International's own DVT 573 turbocharged diesel V8, but you could also spec a Cummins or a Detroit diesel, the big-name mechanical engines of the golden age. And if you needed serious muscle, there was the Super Transstar, which packed a Detroit diesel 12V7 1V12 and could legally haul loads up to a staggering 144,000 pounds in the right configuration. The Transstar carried a whole generation of American freight during trucking's glory years in the 1960s and 70s. It had a spacious tilt-forward cab for easy engine access, a tough steel frame, and no electronic gadgetry to fail on you 1,000 miles from the nearest dealer. If something broke, you fixed it yourself with hand tools on the shoulder of the interstate, the way it was done back then. The classic Transstar and Transstar 2 ran until 1981, when International moved on to its Newport Cab series. But that trapezoidal grille International, hauling doubles across the desert with a Detroit singing behind the cab, remains one of the most beloved sights of vintage American trucking. Number 7. Ford LTL 9000. A lot of folks forget that Ford, yes, the F-150 people, once built some of the biggest, baddest rigs on the American highway. And the crown jewel of that effort was the Ford LTL 9000. It started with Ford's L-Series, launched in 1970 and built at the Kentucky truck plant near Louisville, which is exactly why everyone called them Louisville Line trucks. The L-Series was Ford's first truck designed from the ground up as a dedicated Class 8 conventional. Then in 1976, Ford went after the big dogs. It introduced the LTL 9000, the long hood, top-of-the-line version, with a set-forward front axle and a stretched-out nose built to swallow the biggest engines. This was Ford's direct shot at the Kenworth W900, the Peterbilt 359, and the Mack Superliner, and it looked the part, long, chrome, and imposing. Under that long hood, the LTL 9000 ran the same legendary mechanical iron as its competition, the Big Cam Cummins, the Caterpillar 3406, and Detroit diesel two-strokes like the 8V71 and 8V92. These were pure, no-nonsense diesels. You started them, you listened to them, and you shifted the gears yourself. There was no computer between the driver and the engine. What made the Louisville trucks so beloved was their rugged simplicity. They had tough steel frames, straightforward mechanical systems, and body panels that were famously easy to swap and interchange. A driver or a shop mechanic could keep one of these rolling almost indefinitely with basic parts and basic tools. And Ford actually gave a lot of thought to the cab. The Louisville was well regarded for being a comfortable, roomy place to spend a long day. Ford kept building the Louisville line all the way until 1998, when it sold its heavy truck business, and those trucks lived on for a while as Sterlings. But in its prime, the LTL 9000 proved that the Blue Oval could build a real owner-operator's dream machine. Fords, as they say, don't come any bigger than this. Number 6. Western Star. Here's a brand built for exactly one thing: surviving the toughest, nastiest work in North America. Western Star was born in 1967 as a division of the White Motor Company, and it set up shop way out in Kelowna, British Columbia. Its whole mission was to build rugged, heavy-duty trucks for the brutal terrain of the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada, logging, mining, oil transport, and off-road hauling where a lesser truck would simply break in half. Those early Western Stars borrowed their cabs from sister company Autocar, a company we covered last time as one of the toughest truck builders in history. So right from the start, Western Star had rugged in its DNA. But here's what makes Western Star perfect for this list. These were not mass-produced cookie-cutter trucks. Each one was heavily customizable, spec'd exactly for the punishing job it had to do. Loggers, miners, and heavy haulers loved them because they were overbuilt, dependable, and made from simple, serviceable mechanical components. You didn't buy a Western Star for a fancy dashboard. You bought it because it would still be pulling logs off a mountain a decade after a fancier truck had rusted into the ground. The company had a roller coaster history. When White was sold to Volvo around 1980, Western Star went its own way, ending up under Canadian and later Australian ownership, before eventually landing with Daimler in 2000. Through all of that corporate drama, one thing never changed. The trucks stayed rugged, premium, and purpose-built. Western Star earned a fierce, loyal following in Canada and Australia, where drivers valued brute strength over gimmicks. And unlike almost everything else on this list, Western Star is still with us today, still building some of the toughest vocational trucks money can buy. It's living proof that the old-school philosophy, overbuild it, keep it simple, make it last, never really goes out of style. It just keeps hauling. Number 5. Dodge Bighorn. Now we get to the rarest truck on this entire list, a genuine unicorn that most people have no idea ever existed. Did you know that Dodge once built a full-size Class 8 highway tractor? It's true. It was called the Bighorn, and it is one of the rarest big rigs in American history. The Dodge Bighorn, officially the CNT 950, was introduced in 1973 as the largest and last heavy truck Chrysler ever built. And here's the number that makes collectors weak in the knees. Only 261 Bighorns were ever produced, from 1973 to 1975. That's it, just 261. To put that in perspective, the big manufacturers built more trucks than that in a single week. Remarkably, over 100 of them are still accounted for today, which is an incredible survival rate, and clean examples have sold for astonishing sums. The Bighorn was pure, unapologetic mechanical iron. The standard engine was a Cummins 250 diesel, but you could step up to bigger Cummins power, all the way to the NTC 350, or a Detroit diesel 8V71 in naturally aspirated or turbocharged form. Backed by a Road Ranger transmission, it was a real working truck with no electronic anything. Dodge actually did some clever old-school weight saving too, using aluminum for the cross members, bumpers, battery boxes, and fuel tanks. Though here's a fun detail. That magnificent chrome ram's head hood ornament, the thing the whole truck is named for, weighed a hefty 14 pounds all by itself. The truck's one quirk? That cab was ancient even when the Bighorn was new. The basic design traced back to Dodge cabs of the late 1940s and 50s. It made the truck look almost comically small in the cab and enormous everywhere else. But that just adds to its legend. When Chrysler decided to walk away from the Class 8 market in 1975, the Bighorn died with it. And that's exactly why, today, spotting a real Dodge Bighorn is one of the biggest thrills in the vintage truck world. Number 4. Marmon. If the Dodge Bighorn was the rarest truck on this list, this next one was the fanciest. Meet the Marmon, a truck so beautifully made that it earned the nickname the Rolls-Royce of trucks. Here's what made a Marmon special, and why it belongs in a video about trucks that never needed fancy technology. Starting in 1963, the Marmon Motor Company set up shop in Texas, first in Denton, later in Garland, and did something almost unheard of in the modern truck industry. They hand-built every single truck. There was no assembly line. They never built a truck that wasn't already ordered by a customer. Each Marmon was essentially crafted by hand, from the ground up, to that specific buyer's exact specifications. That's the opposite of fancy automation. It was old-world craftsmanship, skilled workers assembling a premium machine one at a time, and the results spoke for themselves. Marmons were famous for their quality, their gleaming chrome, and their comfort at a time when most work trucks were Spartan and crude. But they weren't just pretty. Drivers who ran them will tell you a Marmon was built to last and designed with the mechanic in mind. The things that were a nightmare to reach on other trucks were easy to get at on a Marmon. Log truckers out in the Northwest swore by them for exactly that reliability. Under the hood, you'd find the best mechanical iron of the era, big Caterpillar and Cummins diesels, often a 425 Cat backed by a 13-speed, simple, powerful, and bulletproof. The Marmon name actually carried real engineering pedigree. The original Marmon company had pioneered the rearview mirror, built one of the world's first V16 engines, and was an early champion of aluminum. That spirit of doing things right carried into the trucks. Sadly, in an overcrowded industry without a big dealer network, Marmon just couldn't sell enough of these hand-built beauties to survive. The very last Marmon rolled out in 1997. Today, seeing one still working is one of the rarest and coolest sights in trucking. Number 3. Kenworth K100. In our first video, the Kenworth W900 made the list as the long-nose king. But Kenworth built another legend at the exact same time, one that ruled the highway from the opposite direction. This is the Kenworth K100, and for a whole era of American trucking, it was the undisputed king of the cabovers. Kenworth launched the K100 in 1961 alongside the W900, and while the W stood for Worthington, the K stood for Kent, the company's other founder. The K100 was a flat-faced Class 8 cab-over engine truck, and it became the go-to rig during the era of strict length laws because that stubby flat nose let you run the longest possible trailer. Drivers loved the commanding high-up view over the road, and the cab tilted fully forward for easy engine access. But the K100 wasn't just practical, it became genuinely iconic. In 1976, Kenworth introduced the legendary Aerodyne sleeper on the K100. It was the first factory raised roof sleeper cab, giving drivers dual bunks and enough headroom to actually stand up inside their truck. For men and women living on the road, that changed everything. Underneath, the K100 was all business, bolted frames and doors with piano-style hinges that made it tough and easy to service, and a menu of the era's greatest mechanical engines. Cummins big cam power, the Caterpillar 3406, and screaming Detroit diesel two-strokes like the 12 V71 pushing well over 400 horsepower, backed by an Eaton Fuller 13-speed. All of it purely mechanical, no computers, just muscle and gears. The K100 became a bona fide TV and movie star, most famously as the red and white cabover in the show BJ and the Bear. Kenworth even built special very important trucker editions, and yes, one was custom-made for the daredevil Evel Knievel himself. The cabover eventually faded when length laws relaxed and drivers went back to long hoods. But the K100 remains a pure, mechanical icon of the golden age, and to this day, restored K100's cabovers are among the most sought-after classic trucks on Earth. Number 2. Peterbilt 379. You've seen this truck 1,000 times, even if you didn't know its name. On posters, in movies, thundering down the interstate with chrome blazing, the Peterbilt 379 is, for millions of people, the very face of American trucking. Peterbilt introduced the 379 in 1987 as the successor to the beloved 359, and it quickly became the most popular owner-operator truck of all time. Built in Denton, Texas, it took everything drivers loved about the classic Pete and made it even better. It kept that iconic long, squared-off nose and gorgeous polished aluminum hood, but added a larger windshield and moved to standard rectangular headlights with the turn signals built right in. Here's why it belongs in a video about trucks that never needed fancy technology. The 379 wasn't about gadgets, it was about raw, customizable mechanical glory. Peterbilt built this truck to be the ultimate expression of an independent driver's personality. You could spec it with the most powerful engines available in all of Class 8, the biggest Caterpillars, the strongest Cummins and Detroit diesels, the legendary mechanical iron of the era. Then you dressed it however you wanted. Extra chrome, long stacks, custom paint, a big stand-up sleeper. No two were exactly alike. That's the magic of the 379. It was a proper working truck, tough, durable and straightforward to keep running, but it was also a rolling work of art and a genuine status symbol. When you'd made it as an owner-operator, you bought a 379 and you took care of it like it was family. The cab was so good that Peterbilt used its basic structure across the model line for decades. And while the industry chased aerodynamics and electronics, the 379 held onto its proud, upright, classic shape right up until 2007, when it was replaced by the nearly identical 389. Today, an original 379 is one of the most coveted trucks in the world, the analog soul of the American road, and an absolute showstopper at any truck show. Number 1. Mack R-Series. And here it is, our number 1, the Mack R-Series. And it earns the top spot for a reason that gets right to the heart of this entire video. This is the truck that used brilliant mechanical engineering to make trucking simpler, not more complicated. Mack introduced the R-Series in 1966 as the successor to the legendary B model, and it ran for an astonishing 40 years, all the way to 2005, with the sole exception of the Kenworth W900. That makes the Mack R the longest produced commercial truck in history. Right away it introduced a game-changing feature, a one-piece fiberglass hood, hinged at the front, that tilted forward to give a mechanic total access to the engine. That idea was so good it became the industry standard. But the real magic, the reason this truck is number 1, was the engine Mack dropped into it, the Maxidine. Introduced for the 1967 model year, the Maxidine was the world's first true high-torque rise diesel, and it was pure mechanical genius. Here's what that means in plain English. A normal diesel of that era had a narrow power band, so drivers needed 10, 15, even 20 gears just to keep the engine in its sweet spot. The Maxidine changed the game. Using nothing but a clever mechanical fuel system and turbo tuning, it delivered an incredible 52% torque rise at a time when the competition managed maybe 20%. and it held flat, usable power across a huge range, from 1,200 all the way to 2,100 RPM. The result? Mack could pair the Maxidine with a simple 5-speed Maxitorque transmission, 5 gears, instead of 20. A brand new Class 8 truck that almost anybody could learn to drive. No fancy technology, just smarter mechanical design. It was revolutionary. And in 1973, Mack pushed even further, widely credited with introducing the first air-to-air intercooled highway engine, the famous Cool Power Mack. Add the Bulldog on the hood, an air ride cab, and Mack's built-in engine brake, and you had a truck that was tough, simple, and unstoppable. You'll still find Mack R models grinding away in quarries today, rock solid since 1966, and our #1 old-school legend. If you love these old rigs, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching, and keep those old trucks rolling.